Welcome. In today's episode, we are going to dive into one of the most pressing issues in financial services, which is financial inclusion. It will surprise you that despite all the advances in technology and the widespread use of mobile phones, millions of people worldwide still don't have access to essential financial services. And that is where partnerships between banks and FinTechs come in. Banks are bringing regulatory expertise, established networks and trust, while FinTechs, on the other hand, are delivering innovation and customer-centered solutions. Together, they are creating affordable and accessible services to bridge the financial gap for those who have been left out. Joining us today is Edem Quintin Dzorpkata, the head of FinTech at CalBank, as we delve into the opportunities, challenges, and strategies banks and FinTechs can harness to make financial services accessible to all. The FinTech Focus podcast is proudly brought to you by Start OA in collaboration with the Africa Discourse Channel.
Hi, my name is Norbert. Welcome to the FinTech in Focus podcast. In this podcast, we bring experts across the FinTech industry to discuss strengths, opportunities, and the state of the FinTech industry. Today, I have the privilege to be hosting one of the big pioneers in the FinTech space in Ghana. Welcome, Edem.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me also.
So my guests, my audience would like to know about you, what you do at your bank, and anything you want us to know.
Sure. So my name is Edem Quintin. But first, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here. My name is Edem Quintin Dzorpkata. I currently lead the FinTech business at CalBank. And for us, the focus more is on how we can leverage on the technology we have to be able to drive partnership, innovation, and give a more customer-centric solution, making it easy for FinTechs to be able to connect with the bank with the innovative solutions. In this case, it makes it easy for them to be able to connect to the bank. Currently, one of my highest highlights will be winning the ECD hackathon that was organized by Bank of Ghana, and that was around building digital products around digital currency in this case. So building solutions around digital currency. So that's me.
Awesome. I mean, the interesting part is we've been having a lot of conversations.
That's so true.
Off mic about FinTech, about the industry, about the opportunities, especially for the banks and FinTechs alike. And just to give our audience a perspective about this, what the evolution looked like over the past decade, we've seen a huge transformation in how financial services are delivered. 10 years ago, you would have to walk to a bank. That was the only option you had, to walk to a bank to make transfers. Or you would have to probably send it through someone who is going to Kumasi to deliver it on your behalf. Thanks to the evolution of technology with great pioneers like MTN Mobile Money, M-Pesa in Kenya, we've seen how people are able to access basic banking services at their fingertips using their mobile money. Now, we are seeing how banks are also trying to fit into that evolution because we've seen the evolution of FinTechs that have also spotted a huge gap of a huge underbanked population in these emerging markets. We are not markets like the US where it's predominantly a card economy, where they have a well-structured, well-developed financial market. In Africa, it's difficult for people to have access to these basic financial services. And FinTechs have spotted these opportunities and leveraging on what MTN has built or M-Pesa have built, they've been able to build on top of those infrastructure to increase financial access to like people in underserved communities. Now, the banks are embracing the change because it's either you innovate or you die, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And those two, the banks and the FinTechs, need to collaborate. They need to they both have something to offer each other.
That's right.
We've seen major success stories like what we've seen in Kenya, we've seen in Nigeria, we've seen some bank startup partnership alike. So I would want us to have a conversation around what you are seeing in the market in terms of the trends, banking collaborations among FinTechs and the banks, and even banking collaboration within the banks and among themselves, because that's how you drive an industry forward. So I'd like to hear from you.
So that's interesting. One of the things that you see that happening is that now we see a lot of collaborations, but do not forget that all of this started with the banks, because the banks have started this way before. It was more of the traditional setting, and all of the other players now that we see, the fintechs and all of that, they actually got that framework from the banks. Because someone started. It's just like how the evolution started. I always say before the 1966, the only way to have access to your funds was only to go to the banking hall. But today we see people, banks have changed, and fintechs have actually made it much simpler in this case through collaboration. When it comes to collaboration in the ecosystem in Africa, like you've mentioned a few examples, like what happens in M-Pesa, Figo, and the rest, you see that a lot of that is happening. Even in Ghana, you see a lot of that happening over here. And it just tells you that all of this is being driven by the collaboration happening between banks and fintech. Now, to delve straight into that, looking at how this can be possible, you realize that both parties have their own specialties. So everyone has their strength. And then how can you bring this together? Part of the thing that you see is that with the banks, their license permit them to do so many things. Now, these fintechs also have their permissible activities where it differentiates from what the banks also can do. With the fintech space, you see them, they are more agile. They bring the speed, they bring the creativity. And I always say, one of the things I noticed is that they're always thinking about the customer. So they have a more broader customer-centric approach to things. And then the banks, we have the regulatory part, and then they've done it for years. So
you have the money.
Yeah, the money also, the money in this case. So in this case, they have to, each party has to come together to be able to blend this. And then at the end, we'll be able to sing a good harmony in this case. So there's always that in place in this case.
Interest. I think earlier before the podcast, we were talking about the evolution of Visa. And I mean, it's interesting to know that Visa started from Bank of America.
That's true.
So it also shows you how banks are trying to also lead the financial technology drive, right? And I mean, Bank of America did this like years ago, right? So
years ago.
And you mentioned something about, I mean, collaboration. I was speaking to, I have a lot of founders reaching out to me, especially within the fintech space. They're like, okay,
same over here.
They'll definitely back you.
I tell you.
And some of them reach out to me. They're like, okay, we want to do this. We don't have the license. We want to partner with a bank. But there's a big bull in the room. Like you're saying, the banks have the money. They have the regulatory license stuff. And you have, as a young guy or a young team coming up, you have this, $1 billion idea. And you want to go to a bank and you are first, you are scared of the bank's massive infrastructure, right? Financial and physical infrastructure. And you are scared that, okay, is my idea safe with these guys? Because I've heard a lot of funny stories about how startups have spoken to banks about their ideas, or they've even sent projects and you see some of these banks sabotaging them. And which doesn't really paint a good picture about what these collaborations look like, right? So I'm thinking about, I mean, how banks are approaching this differently, how banks are creating a safe environment for emerging companies to feel safe to trust them enough to partner with them?
Well, this is actually a genuine concern. So I speak more from the Ghanaian region on this topic. You know, everyone has an idea, and I always say the ideas it cuts across everyone. What you always talk about, someone has already thought about it, and the fact that it can drop in anyone's mind. So you never know the bank's roadmap and all. But to move away from the negative side, you see, the ecosystem is very big. There are more gaps in there for us to fill. And we all play our part. Today, if the banks had not taken certain steps, like we wouldn't have had FinTechs today.
Yeah.
The same way, vice versa. So everyone has their part to play. I always say we should be open to come together, to work together. Because
But I'm scared, bro.
Yes. The fact that you're scared, at the end, we all have to protect ourselves. So if there are any contracts you feel you want to discuss with your lawyers, and then.
But you know the funny thing, you know the bank is big, right? And you just have an idea, maybe an MVP, and you are going to a bank with what? And to sign an NDA before they listen to your idea that might not work. You understand?
Yeah.
So there's that
fear.
There's that fear already, right? So how do we still those legal arrangements need to be put in place, but how do we continue to create that comfortable environment where the banks know where they are supposed to play in, and the emerging technology companies know where they are also supposed to play in, so that everybody knows that, okay, this is the role I play, so that when they come to the table to explore some of this relationship, one doesn't have to feel disadvantaged against the other.
So at the end, it's always supposed to be a win-win.
Yeah.
Each player must be able to put whatever they want to do on the table, and then you find the middle ground. One of the things I've realized is that whatever idea it is, you might need that bank to be able to fulfill all what you need to do. And in this case, the bank too, in the case they want to also increase their profit, they want to maximize the gaps in the ecosystem and all. So at the end, they're also willing to listen to you. And you see, so many things have changed. Now, there's not like before. Today, you can just go on social media, say something, and then, it just goes viral.
Yeah.
So now people are more cautious. People are more careful about some of these things. And at the end, I always say there's so much gaps for us to fill. When it comes to what's happening currently, the internet penetration is actually is increasing. Smartphone penetration in Africa is actually increasing. You see this data, and you see that there's so much we can achieve in this case. You need me as a bank to be able to do A, B, C, D. Because if you even had a FinTech license, you still wouldn't have been able to achieve whatever it is in this case, because you need a bank to be able to
do as a deposit taker.
It becomes at the end, we all need each other. So we just leverage on each other's strength to be able to fill in the gaps in the ecosystem. And I understand the fear, but at the end, if it sits at home with that idea and you don't try, nothing is going to happen.
I mean, that's true.
In this case, you still don't have anything with you. So sometimes you have to take the bold step. And one of the things I've realized is now all sectors are changing. People want to see how best they can drive innovation. Innovation has come to change a lot of things. Like today, when you walk to a car bank branch, everything is digitalized. And you're just wondering, okay, what's happening? You realize that it's having an effect. Technology is having an effect on every sector.
Yeah.
And the ideas, we need each other. I always say this, like at the end, we need to come together to be able to let some of these things play out. So how best can we do this? Let's sit at the table and then come together. And banks are changing their approach. They're moving away from the traditional bits. Now you see banks hiring younger people and changing. Like now people want to listen.
They want to play the FinTech game.
That's
because I mean, the FinTech game gives you access. It gives you reach.
But that's the future now. So I was going through the evolution of banking, and I realized that from when ATMs were introduced, when internet banking was introduced, mobile apps and all of that, it's actually gone through a certain stage. I always tell people now, what era are we in? We're actually in the financial technology. Everyone wants to be able to provide that. The fintechs have already taken the lead. How best can we merge some of this together? You see, when we keep having their competitive mindset, we wouldn't be able to achieve so many things, because trust me, when it comes to, when you check, I keep checking the BOJ report. I see how much last year the fintechs did and all of that. I'm asking, what can we do together? How can we also be involved in some of these things? That's why even for us, the bank, Cowbank hasn't even had the fintech division for years, for a while now. But for them to even think about it, that there's an importance for this to happen. You see that things are changing now.
Innovate or you die.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Otherwise, you miss out. Because, and I feel there's a new wave happening. I always talk about this new wave. Now, the moment you talk about a digital product, the young ones are keen. They want to jump on stuff like that. And one of the things I'm realizing is that the old folks with the money, they're fading out.
Yeah.
The next generation are the ones that the money is being passed on to. Exactly. And these guys actually flow in the digital space. Yes, yeah. So in this case, how can banks also leverage on this, come together? Let's see how best we can drive innovation. You see, we always speak about financial inclusion, but most of the time when it gets to the table, a lot of people are trying to pull back or see what cut corners and all of that.
And sorry to catch you, but if you look at even financial inclusion, the way, from where I see things, the way financial inclusion can be achieved is through these strategic collaborations, right? Because FinTechs have distribution. They have mobile apps that are user-friendly compared to what most banks have. And these, like for instance, MTN's mobile money, it's touched almost every corner across the economy.
That's true.
Right? So it's easy for you to reach huger target audience. Right? So, and at the end of the day, if, let's say, a FinTech processes maybe $1 billion in a year, where does the money go? It has to go to a bank. Because at the end of the day, the FinTech is not a bank to hold those deposits. Right? So as you were mentioning, those strategic collaborations are really, really vital for our growth. 3 years ago, or was it 2 years ago, I remember that I was doing a strategy session for like one of these banks. And in my session, we're talking about how banks, the session was on digital transformation. And we're looking at how the bank can become one of the foremost digital positioned bank. And it got to the questioning time. So during the session, I didn't get questions like that. Questioning, not knowing they were jotting all their questions. And one lady asked me, she was like, risk. Right? When it comes to these collaborations, risks are really, really vital because every bank wants to mitigate their risk. They want to mitigate their exposure because it took them years for them to build up this infrastructure, right? And now comes the regulatory barrier that makes it difficult for some of these collaborations to happen because all these entities are regulated under various jurisdictions, right? So I also want to understand from your perspective, from your experience in the space, what has been some of the biggest barriers you've seen in the market when it comes to collaboration between banks and fintechs?
So you realize that both parties have their own pace. Yes. So it comes to the pace part, and you've spoken about the risk part. The banks are more laid. They would want to do their due diligence and all of those things before. And you see, the bank has a lot of processes. But the fintech, they are always quick. They want to push their idea.
They're agile. They want to do things. Like they don't have time for your KYCs. The transaction must go. It must go
on. So in this case, it sometimes makes it very difficult because you see some of these things happening, and then it gets to a point someone is caught, someone doesn't want to move on again, and it becomes very difficult. But at the end, it must be done.
Yeah,
it must be done. So you realize that this keeps happening, and sometimes the regulator has to come make some of these things possible. I always say today we have the likes of the sandbox that is available,
yeah.
and I still think it still has to a few things must be added to it, because I always engage people in those spaces, especially with the fintechs that want to be able to still get a license and all. And you realize that a lot of ideas are there. People want to really do things. One of the things that I think should be done is to make it easy for these fintechs where they tag along with banks. Banks have done this for years. Now, how can they learn
from the bank?
From the banks.
Yeah.
So you tag them along with the banks, let them go to a mentorship bit. At the end, they'll be mentored also, and then they get to understand why certain processes are done.
But isn't that why I've actually seen this trend?
Yeah.
Like banks like Societe General,
Yeah.
Stanchart,
Yeah.
Stanbic,
Yeah.
they've set up innovation hubs and programs to support companies alike, especially these emerging fintechs.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to some of the lowest hanging fruit, we are seeing some few progress within the space. But I'm also looking at regulation, right? Because we've also seen, what have you seen as the biggest barrier on the regulatory side? Because everybody in the market, in our market, is more concerned about, okay, between myself and you as a bank, we can have a gentleman's agreement to have that relationship to process any payment or to launch any product, right? But we still need the Bank of Ghana, we still need the likes of SEC to give us those regulatory approval to proceed to do whatever we want to do, right? So what do you think are some of the things that regulators can take into consideration when maybe, for instance, they are drafting this new open banking policy and the digital banking regulation? What would you want to see? What are some of the things that you want to see like in those regulatory dynamics?
I think it would have to do with the engagement. So, you see, one of the things I always believe in is that the regulators should always be at the forefront of innovation.
Yeah.
And with innovation, there's always a thin line between innovation and compliance.
Yeah.
And the way sometimes the fintechs move, the regulators are always somewhere
too fast.
They're too fast. And I always say, with the banks, they've done this for years. Like, I always hear the complaint why regulators more harder on banks than the other parties. And I always ask the question, if you had 5 kids and then the firstborn does something bad and equally the last one does the same thing, who are you going to chastise more? It's always the firstborn you go hard on. So for the regulator, one of the things that I think they should do more is with engagement. See how best they can pair people together, bring them together, and then listen to them. Why? You see, banks have done it for years. They are going to think about the risks part, the compliance. They've done this over 40 years.
Yes.
So why don't you bring them together, let them collaborate, and then be able to present some of these things to you? They are going to give you more findings in this case. And now, one of the good things I've seen with the regulator is that they're more receptive to some of these things. They want to listen to you. For the FinTech office to even have a channel where you can schedule a call. Yes, like I was so shocked.
And they are quick to respond.
Yeah, they're quick to respond.
Very,
because
very
I actually
quick to
tested it. And then I jumped on the call and I was so shocked that people were on the call to listen to me and advise on what what I had presented to them. And I was so shocked. For me, I think it's a good step in the direction for us to actually have some of these things happen. Because you're the regulator, you're like a parent. You need to listen to what is happening because innovation is always happening. Everyone would want to have some of these things out there. And with what they had done with the regulatory sandbox, trust me, it was a good thing they did. I really love that they did that to the.
It's Bank of Ghana. They are. It's obvious they are one of the leading regulators across the world. Not just in the sub-region, but across the world. And for me, I always like to think about what the future looks like when it comes to fintech, when it comes to banking. In the evolution post-COVID, there were a lot of school of thoughts that banks were not going to exist. Banks were going to die. And it was either the banks consolidate with the fintech. Because, I mean, if you go to countries like the UK, US, in Latin America, where you have like the new banks, where you have like the Revolut and etc. New bank, exactly. You can see how much they are processing. You can see their user bases. Like they have like huge customer base, and they are processing a lot of volumes, more than what some banks are processing.
Even all the banks combined. It's huge.
At a point, FinTechs were processing more than what all the banks in Nigeria were processing combined, right? And that should show you how scary that evolution looked like, right? And we are looking at what the future of banking look like. Would banks become FinTechs? Because we've seen the changes already. We've seen banks move from trying to cut cost on physical infrastructures, going digital. So you go to some banks and you can see more of the telebankers, right? And you can see more of them going very hard on mobile experience, bringing more products to meet growing demands of what the Gen Zs and the young people actually want, right? And we see the fintechs tackling or doing very, very well in this space. And they are building the market share gradually. So a lot of people are saying, okay, then eventually the banks might die, right? Are you of that view that, well, you might be biased, but you might be biased?
Trying not to be biased.
Okay.
So one of the things that I can assure you is banks are not going to die.
How?
So one of the things that you see, the fintechs have taken the lead in some of the things. And now what you also see with the banks is they are moving away from the traditional bit into the digital banking. So today, you see, when you speak about the FinTech Awards, there's a category for a digital bank in this case. And we have people winning, even people falling within that category. So there's a change happening. Banks are moving away from the traditional.
The pace is slow. The pace is slow because of regulation.
Yes, as much as it's happening. Because
so by the time a fintech can go to market with a new product, like maybe crypto, it will take a bank years for them to do something like that. Right. So I also see an issue when it comes to the pace of they meeting with
the current. I'd agree to that, because you see, as much as they are moving, the customers have already jumped to whatever the fintechs are giving.
Exactly.
But I feel it's a gradual process. The banks are taking their time. You see, for the fintechs to be able to fly today, the banks had to do the work.
True.
You see, they had gone through all of that, had fraud cases and all of that. And you see, let's not forget that as much as the fintechs are moving faster today, they're having issues.
So the fintechs are agile, they move fast, they break things, they fix them on the go. And it's hard for banks to break things, like move fast, break things and go, because they have legacy infrastructure. They have legacy processes, they have legacy frameworks, and they have regulation, which prevents them from that pace of speed. I was when it comes to fraud, I was telling you something earlier about how America, Bank of America started the whole credit card evolution thing, and they were experiencing massive fraud and stuff like that. I mean, the bank started, but you can see that the fintechs are on the rise. Would you say that 5 to 10 years from now, a bank there will be branchless banks?
Okay.
Yeah, like you wouldn't see any like physical.
Like a new bank. They just switch.
EcoBank would just switch to digital, because I mean, no one walks to the bank again to sign checks. They don't go to withdraw money.
It's actually dropped. Those numbers have actually dropped. So for me, I believe it will happen, because currently you see the move happening. banks are now becoming financial technology. They're embedding that in their operations.
Yeah.
They're making their operations much efficient. We see the likes of AI. People are embedding that. Now banks are more receptive to even blockchain. They are willing to embed that into their infrastructure and all of that. We have RPA where they are automating stuff in this case. So it's a gradual process. And I'm telling you, in the next 10 years, trust me, banks will switch into solely new banks. I'm telling you, because you see, the whole drive of a digital bank, now people have seen the benefit of it. Even customers, one of the things, there are three things I see customers now they want, and even myself, even putting myself in that customer shoe, I want convenience, I want speed, I want security.
Yeah.
Now everyone is thinking in that line. How can I be able to get that from any player out there? And that's how banks are also thinking. So you realize that now you sit in bank conferences and people are talking about fintech. We experienced the 3 year summit.
Yeah.
See how banks were involved.
Yes.
And all of that, a lot of people were talking about AI. I'm like, wait, do these guys even understand?
And that's how what AI is.
Yeah, do they even
No,
understand?
everybody is saying something. They have to say something. Now, I'd want to know what excites you about the future of finance, the future of banking in across Africa. For instance, like AI. What are some of the exciting things that you likely see, you are hoping to see, or you are hoping to do? I know you won't say it, but if you had that magic wand, like, what would you like to see as some of the interesting things that might happen in the future of banking and finance? And also, that could also drive financial inclusion at large, most importantly.
So for me, it has to do with touching lives.
Yeah.
So leveraging technology to be able to touch people's lives. Because you see, wherever we build today, whether with a collaboration or without a collaboration, today we are people elsewhere in rural areas are able to process payment because what we exist. People's lives are being touched. People, I was speaking about the fact that I think one of the brands were using one of the platforms to process payments. And I was just thinking about the fact that if they needed healthcare and they needed to pay using another medium, even with any of the digital medium, they actually needed this partner to be able to process it. So at the end, it's changing lives, it's making people more richer, and then it's changing how people's lifestyles have actually changed over time. How can we tag along? That's what I'm saying. In this case, we're actually touching people's lives. And with the technology that we have, like you spoke about AI, blockchain, and these are things going to happen, especially with blockchain, like for the likes of open banking. It's already been happening, but now it's going to go deeper, leveraging on the blockchain in this case. So with technology, trust me, it's going to go wild. And I'm looking forward to the next 5 years in Ghana, the next 10 years, and it's going to be so wild.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Same here. I mean, I share the same sentiments with you. I mean, if you ask me, 5 years, banks will cut their physical infrastructure by like 80%.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
It's not going to make sense for them, right? And they are going to increase their digital exposure. In 10 years, it will just be one headquarters, 7, like a whole lot of customers, right? And we are seeing how AI is making it easier for every company to automate a lot of processes. So, for instance, like tellers and et cetera.
Not to forget about the personal experience.
The personal experience the personal experience is true, but still, what AI, and I saw something scary this week, right? There's something on Google that makes it easy for you to record, let's say, you can copy scripts on a site and you paste it somewhere and it will create a conversation for you. So let's say if you're a student, you can script something on the website, copy it, paste it, and it would create a podcast for you. And it's more personalized than what a human. I saw that and I was like, this is crazy. Imagine this as imagine this use case in a banking scenario, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. These are some of the things that excite me, except that it's going to take away a lot of jobs and etc. And also continue to see the continuous collaboration between FinTechs and banks. But the big bull in the room still has to be fixed. We need that regulatory ease. And I think the open banking policy and the digital banking regulations could create that level playing ground of what is expected of all the players, because the digital banking, the open banking policy is going to open up all the financial infrastructure where no one has that central repository of, like, let's say one bank would actually own that.
And it promotes collaboration.
Right? And at the end of the day, financial inclusion at large, right? Because it makes transaction interoperable, it makes communication interoperable, and everybody wins because everybody knows at what part of the value chain they contribute when it comes to the goal to driving financial inclusion and also making money for whoever is involved.
That's very
most
true.
important.
That's very. I would say for open banking, the moment it happens in Ghana, a lot of things are going to spring up. It's going to change the way we even see things, because in this case, a lot of people will be able to leverage this to do a lot of things. And blockchain is one interesting thing. I always speak about blockchain, the fact that you're able to have a ledger of the person's data cut across and everyone can connect into it. It makes it very easy for some of these things to happen. So trust me, for blockchain, I always say we should all be looking out for the open banking. The moment it comes out, our lives are going to change.
I'm looking forward to it. I wished we could extend this conversation. I mean, when it comes to our conversation, we'll continue it. You know where we'll continue it?
Funny that we do this on a regular.
We do this on a regular day. So
we do this on a regular
once again, it's been great hosting you, and thank you for making time.
Thanks you for having me.
I look forward to hosting you again.
Sure.
Next time we'll be looking at something else. We'll definitely figure something else out.
Yes.
But once again, thank you for making time.
Thanks so much for having me.
We are signing out. This is the second episode of the FinTech Focused podcast. Visit our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter pages, and wherever you find your podcast, you download it. Share it and let someone listen to how banks and FinTechs can collaborate with each other to drive financial inclusion. Thank you.
And that wraps up today's episode of the FinTech Focused podcast. A huge thank you to Edem for sharing valuable insights into how banks are embracing digitization, leveraging emerging technologies like AI and blockchain to meet demands for convenience, speed, and security in today's financial landscape. If you enjoyed today's discussion and want to hear more about the innovators driving Africa's financial future, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you tune in. Don't forget to share this episode with your network. Thanks for listening.